Okay. Hey, everybody. How's it going? I got ahead of myself. I set up the stream, and then it wouldn't connect to my camera. So I had to kind of rejigger everything and do it on my phone. So thank you for joining me, and thank you for being a paying supporter of the Hot Zone. Certainly appreciate all of you. So let's this is going to be an Ask Me Anything. So I'm going to scroll back up to the very top here. How can unelected Supreme Court have so much power against the states? Why would people who work for the feds not stand up? Well, I'm sure you understand how the Supreme Court works, right? I mean, the whole point of the Supreme Court is that they're not elected. And so they can avoid us having the tyranny of the majority, as they say. These people should not be elected. They should be chosen by the people that we elected in the U.S. Senate, and that's how it works. So if you're not happy with the Supreme Court, that's kind of how the founders intended for it to be. They wanted us to be frustrated, and they wanted things to be difficult to get done so that it couldn't be abused by one side or the other. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah. Please check Prophecy by Jimmy Evans. Okay. Yesterday, was it actual hand-to-hand combat that you were involved in, or did you do just enough to escape? You mean when I was, they tried to kidnap me? If you watch that video, I went down to the border with Venezuela, between Venezuela and Colombia, and that wasn't from yesterday. That was from a couple years ago. And I crossed the border into Venezuela on foot, and three guys came up and tried to kidnap me. And it did not go well for them or me, for any of us. I fought them off and got out of there, and broke my camera in the process, ended up with skin knees and some things like that. But they certainly did not expect somebody to fight back like I did. But there was no way I was going willingly into Venezuela to be kidnapped. I fear our enemies have been entering through the wide open southern border. Yeah, you think? And are planning to attack internally. I suspect it will happen near the election in November. What are your thoughts on this? Without a doubt, there are bad people planning to do bad things to America. There's no question about that. That's always the case. And without a doubt, it's easy for them to get across our U.S. southern border. And so I think it's a matter of when, not if, we are attacked in the United States by terrorists. But, whether or not it is around the election, what would that be saying? If they're attacking around the election, could that be because they wanted one side or the other to win? Very interesting thought process, kind of a thought exercise to go through that and figure out, well, if Hezbollah, for example, wants Joe Biden to win, why is that? And shouldn't that be a clue for us if we wanted to have a strong president? Wouldn't that be a clue to us for who not to vote for? Two questions. I don't know what time ET is, Eastern time. Eastern time is New York, all the way down to where I am in Panama. Although Panama is only on Eastern time for half the year because we don't do daylight savings time. So we switch back and forth between Central time and Eastern time half the year. Question number 2, do you think Israel would go after Yahya Sinwar, Khaled Mashal? Yes, they would. Of course they would. Of course they'd go after him. Are you saying because they would definitely have hostages around them as human shields? They would still go after them. No question. Was your previous decision to possibly return to Israel put back to March because you couldn't gain access into Gaza? and didn't want to broadcast from the rooftops away from the action. Yes, and my clients who pay me to be over there kind of feel like it's status quo at this point. There are just there's not enough changes taking place to make it worth having somebody there in the field. It's very expensive for them to do that. And so they're like, let's wait until something bigger happens and then we'll send you back over. So let's see. Israel spent $6 billion on attacking Iran's nuclear facilities, so they have the bomb. So why are they waiting? Why is Israel waiting? Well, they're not going to be the first to employ a nuclear bomb since Nagasaki. And you've probably heard me say over and over again, nuclear bombs only work as deterrents. Anybody who uses a nuclear bomb in the future will open a Pandora's box that nobody wants to open. And they know it. And if you're using a nuclear bomb, you're probably going to be using it against a principal actor, not a proxy. What I mean is, as I've said, the principal actors in the world are China, Russia, Iran, the United States. You could say Western Europe, but that would also be the United States. Israel is a proxy for the United States. Everybody is a proxy for Iran almost. Ukraine is a proxy for Western Europe. The only principal actor and China, of course, the only principal actor that's currently involved in a conflict is Russia. But they're involved not with another principal actor, but with a proxy. And so it's still a proxy war. When the United States was fighting in Afghanistan, we were a principal force engaged in a proxy conflict with Iran, and we were fighting that conflict in Afghanistan and Iraq. Okay? So let's, say that Israel, if it decides to get to go nuclear against Iran, it's almost unthinkable. It's against their own policy. Their own strategic policy says we won't be the first to use it unless the state of Israel is being threatened with a nuclear bomb itself. And so, they call that the Samson plan or something like that. Israel's not going to use a nuclear bomb unless it has no other options. And whether they go directly against Iran, I think they are likely to go directly against Iran at some point, but they're more likely to do it like they've done it in the past, which is through cyber means or through targeted bombings of strategic sites inside Iran. Okay. I understand your concept of push-pull reasons for illegal immigration. I understand the financial gain reasoning for these migrants. However, what are your thoughts on the reasons why the Biden administration insists on allowing them to come to this country? What's he gaining from this? Does he really think this will increase the number of votes for him? Well, I talked about this on my live on my YouTube channel yesterday from New York about the apportionment issue. So one of the reasons that leftists want to flood the United States with migrants is that they call themselves a sanctuary city, they fill that city with migrants, and then they have more bodies when it comes to apportioning the 432 delegates in the U.S. Congress. And so they can get more votes that way. The people that are here illegally can't vote at the ballot box, but they can vote because of their physical presence in a certain place. Now, once the every 10-year census is over, like it was, we just passed the census now 4 years ago. Now they don't want them in their sanctuary cities. You've noticed that. Now they want to push them somewhere else, like Texas. Send them to somewhere that's a red state and hopefully turn those states blue-ish purple. These people are thinking long game. They know that the illegals who come in can't vote, but they will have babies, and those babies will be American citizens, and those people can vote. But not only that, the leftists, the Democrats, want these illegal migrants, and I really think a lot of the Republicans do as well, specifically because of the taxes that they will pay when they work in the United States. Anybody who works in the United States must pay taxes in the United States, whether you're here legally or not. And there are 7 million jobs available out there. And so if we bring illegals in to work those jobs, it's going to boost the tax revenue and give us more wage slaves. And that is one serious reason why I think leftists want more illegals in the country. So it's many reasons. It's always a complex and thorny issue, but that's one of the reasons. Okay, I'm 70 now, and I keep forgetting what time you are on from GMT local time. I'm like GMT minus 4 or 5, something like that. Could you tell more about the trip to Israel in October? What are the dates and the costs? Okay, I can put up a link to that, maybe. Let me see if I can go over to the live here. Okay, yeah, I think I can put the link up to the trip in October. So this is a bit.ly link, and I'll put it in the comments here. You can go read all about it. That's the trip to Jordan and Israel. If you want to check out the tactical self-protection and crisis preparedness training we have going at Maple Fork Lodge in May, here is the link to that one. And if you're interested in the journey to Armenia in May, here's the link to that. Okay. And what was the other one you asked about? Okay. All right. There you go. My sound keeps going out. You have no sound or picture. Really? I am getting your comments here. Can you guys see me? Okay. Well, all right, let's go back to the next question. I think the government is definitely involved in sex trafficking. They also knew that October 7th was going to happen. I think you're delving pretty deep into the tinfoil hat territory if you think that the U.S. government is engaged in sex trafficking on purpose. There are too many people involved in the U.S. government, and most people, believe it or not, in the United States, including the 1.8 million who work for the U.S. federal government, are halfway decent people and are not going to put up with that kind of stuff. So I don't think the government is intentionally involved in sex trafficking. Now, are they involved in trafficking? Yes, because they're funding the migration, the illegal migration. These guys are definitely funding and facilitating the illegal migration coming into the United States, and that makes them traffickers. But I don't think they're doing it to, deliver little boys to pedophiles or something like that. I think that's crossing the line into serious conspiracy theory territory, and I don't do that. I don't get into those. The Dems are already blaming Republicans for the border crisis. Yeah, right. Of course they are. How did you and Connie meet? Okay. There's an interesting question. It was an ambush. Connie and I met when I got out of the Army. When I got off active duty, I went to Wisconsin to go to school. And while I was in Wisconsin, I I'd sworn off girls by that point. I had dated around so much when I was in the Army that I was pretty disgusted with myself, because I realized I'm really kind of that guy. I'm that dog that women talk about. That's just a ladies' man. And I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be a good man, and I wanted to settle down and get married. And so I just told God, you know what? I'm not going to date. I'm going to go to college. And for the time being, until you tell me otherwise, I'm not going to date. And right about that time, I met Connie. And so because I wasn't looking at her like a piece of meat, I wasn't looking at her like, sex on a stick. I actually saw her as an actual person. And I thought, wow, she's got thoughts and feelings and emotions and opinions. And I had never looked at girls that way before. And so we became friends, like actual friends. And after about 6 months, I guess I decided, we talked about it, and I told her all about the kind of person that I had been, and that I didn't want to be that kind of person anymore. And she was able to accept me like I was. And well, the rest is history. We just decided to quit being friends at some point. And that is really nice to have her be your best friend first, and then have the romance come later. What advice do you have for a borderline middle low income husband father for a first step in becoming my own employee as opposed to someone else's? Possibly a resource you could point me to. Okay, here's my advice. I used to work as a stockbroker many years ago, worked for about 10 years as a stockbroker, and I made really good money. But I realized when the market went down, my income went down. When the market went up, my income went up. And I couldn't rely on it. And I had been telling all my clients for many years that they should diversify their investments. But I realized I was not diversifying my cash flow. I was only diversifying what I was investing and not my actual income. So I decided to try to diversify my income and realized that if I had 10 different sources of income that were small, it would add up to a much more secure income, because if one or two dropped out, the other ones would keep going. And so I'd be able to make more money and make a more stable income. So I started working on looking for ways to diversify my income. And writing was one of those. I started writing because I could do that and sell my writing to magazines and books and stuff. We had a small farm, and so we put part of our farm into a state program that you plant trees on it, and then they pay you monthly just to let the trees grow, to try to get more trees in the county. And so we did that, and we rented out we finished off the apartment above the garage and then rented that out, had some rental income. And we just built an income, a more diverse income stream, little by little. And it's taken some time, and some things do really well and then they don't, they just go away. And some things start out with almost nothing and then they actually start making money, like my YouTube channel. And so, we just kept throwing. I tell people it's like throwing a bucket of Jello against the wall just to see what sticks. And so I would recommend that you don't just go quit your job, but that you start looking for side hustles that you can do that will help you to diversify your cash flow. And if you throw enough Jello against the wall, sooner or later something is going to stick and something's going to actually work out. And then you're going to go, oh, wow, I can afford to quit my job now. When it got to the point where my writing was making more than my job as a stockbroker, then I quit the job as a stockbroker and I went full-time as a writer. So I think that that's the best advice I can give you on that topic. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. I'm sorry if you don't have sound or video. How can you hear what I'm saying? But if you can hear me but you can't see me, I'd say close everything down and get back into the into the web page and restart it, and it will probably work. Okay. Okay. Israel not planning to use nuke. Iran plans to use nuke. Yes, Iran says that they will use a nuke if they get it. If anybody was going to use a nuke, it would be Iran. And I think that Israel has to take them seriously if they're saying they're going to do it. If Israel knew that Iran had one, Israel might preemptively strike, but they'd be more likely to try to strike the area where the nuke is and cause the nuke and destroy the nuke in Iran, rather than letting them fire it at Israel. So, do you think Biden will declare martial law if he thinks he might lose the election or has lost the election? No, I don't think he will. I think it's going to be absolute chaos if Trump wins the election. Don't get me wrong. I was there for Trump's first inauguration, and it was probably one of the most dangerous things I've ever done in my life. Antifa was everywhere. I got assaulted like 2 or 3 times just for filming, and they were catching cars on fire, smashing windows. It was insane. And it'll be worse than that if Trump gets elected a second time. It would not surprise me if they didn't have an insurrection and take over the White House. They've tried to do it before and have failed, but they might try it again. Okay. I truly believe there's something way bigger than us going on. I think all heads of state are involved in this one world order. What do you really think? So here's what I think about that. You should never ascribe to malevolence what can be sufficiently explained by stupidity. What I mean is, I believe that there is a grand conspiracy to destroy us, but it's not being orchestrated by a cabal of people from the Bilderbergs or a bunch of heads of state in the New World Order. I don't think that they're smart enough or organized enough to do that. But the Bible says that people who deny God have been taken captive by the devil to do his will. And it also says in the first chapter of Romans that when people deny God, God gives them over to a depraved mind to do what ought not be done. These people, a depraved mind means people see good things as bad and bad things as good. They don't have a true moral compass. And so it's easy for Satan to control people like that. So if you ask me, do I think most heads of state are submitted to Christ? I would say absolutely not. And therefore, those heads of state are easy for Satan to manipulate into doing what he would say, what Satan is trying to do. These people don't believe that they are destroying the world. They believe they're saving the world because everything they see that's bad looks good, and everything they see that's good looks bad. So when they see, whatever it is, abortion, they think that's fantastic. We've got to do more of that. This is great. Abortion is great. The concept of the fact that they're murdering little babies, doesn't even occur to them. It's no, they can't see that because they're depraved. And if they're depraved, then Satan can use them to do whatever he wants. So that's what I think is actually happening. Okay, let's see here. Concerning the addition of illegals, do you think the government could be compensating for the murder of 65 million preborns and the effect abortion has had on the Social Security system? Yeah, absolutely. 65 million babies murdered in the womb through abortion means 65 million taxpayers that aren't there to pay taxes. And they've got all these people growing older, and we got nobody to prop up the tax base. And that's why I said, I believe that they want these people as tax slaves. And that's one of the reasons why they're bringing them in. And that if there was any kind of argument why we ought to be allowing migrants into our country, that would be the argument, is we need people paying taxes because the government is really, really inefficient at spending money. But maybe it'd be better for the government to get better at how it spends its money. The anchor baby issue was never settled. SCOTUS could make it final if someone standing filed suit. Yeah, I agree. Okay, 5x5. I've sound and picture, sound and sound and sound. Okay. Sound and vision here. You had to go to the locals application. Can you explain what's happening in Texas with them trying to not succeed, secede, as in leave the union? Texas is the only state in the union that has written into its constitution the ability for it to secede from the federal government and become its own country. And I used to live in Texas. There's, ever since I can remember, back in the 80s, there have always been people who are calling for Texas to secede. Whether that happens is, it's very unlikely. For Texas to secede would mean essentially a civil war in the United States. The United States can't afford for Texas to leave the Union because of the amount of taxes that Texas pays to the federal government. It would cause the federal government to pretty much collapse. Texas, I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, but yeah, there's some talk because of the Supreme Court ruling that Texas had to take down the barbed wire that they put up to keep the illegals out. And now Texas is bucking the Supreme Court and saying, I don't care what you say, this is not settled and we're not taking it down. And so they're calling the U.S. federal government on this and calling them out and saying, what are you going to do about it? You going to send your troops down here to fight with our troops? You know that's not going to happen. And Texas knows that's not going to happen. So they know that Texas knows that the federal government pretty much has to back down. Now, what they'll do is they'll try to levy sanctions against Texas, and they'll try to say, well, we're going to take away federal funding for schools or federal this, federal that. The federal government funds all kinds of stuff, and they do it that way instead of just letting it be funded through the free market, because then they can have control like this, and they can threaten to try to get states to do what they want, rather than letting states just tax their own people and fund their own schools and stuff. The federal government wants to have control over that money so that they can threaten states to do what they want to do. Okay. He has never answered one of my questions ever. Who is that? Ann 67 Yanez. Well, ask a question, Ann. I'll answer it. Look what God has used your marriage to glorify him. Yes, he has. 10 years in counting with my best friend. Writing is not for making a living for 99% of us, but it sure can contribute. That's correct. Writing is a good side hustle, but it's not necessarily going to make you rich. It certainly hasn't made me rich. Are you able to elaborate on how you adopted your son? My hubby's adopted, and we've adopted 2 special needs kiddos. So I love hearing adoptive stories. We wanted to adopt, but I didn't want to have to bribe some judge in El Salvador to adopt or anything. And so we put ourselves into the foster care system when we lived in Maryland. We had a little farm, and they told us, hey, if you're coming here to adopt, don't, because to adopt a baby, don't, because for a kid to be here, he's got to be abused or neglected, and a baby hasn't had time to be abused or neglected, so it's very unlikely you'll get a baby. And we said, well, that's fine. We'll foster, and we'll just pray about it. We'll see what happens. And then I went off one day to an interview, working as a journalist, and I got a call from my wife, and she said, I got a surprise for you when you get home. And I said, did you buy another cow? Because the week before I had gone somewhere on a shoot, and she had a cow when I came home that she had brought home in the back of the Suburban. And I was like, please don't buy livestock and put it in the Suburban. So I was like, did you buy another cow? And she goes, no, we got a Joey. And I'm like, wait, you got a kangaroo? And she was like, no, we got a baby. And so they had called her. It was an emergency placement. Mom he was 3 days old from the hospital. His birth mother was homeless. And so when she had the baby in the hospital, she said, I don't have anywhere to take this kid. And she just relinquished him to the system right away. And he came to us 3 days old from the hospital. He's never been anywhere else. He's been ours from day 3. So that's how we got him. It took 2 years to actually adopt him. But once we adopted him, it's been great since then. Okay. Elaborate to adopt. Do you think Russia will attack NATO countries after Ukraine? Certainly possible. I think it's not probable. I think that what NATO is trying to do by talking about this is drum up support for Ukraine, is bolster the support for Ukraine. Look, NATO controls 60% of the world's military power, 60%. Russia now, at this point, probably controls more like 6%. So Russia knows that they can't go up against NATO. that they'll lose. And so they're hoping to at least accomplish their objectives in Ukraine, stop the fighting. If they can freeze the lines right where they are and call that permanent, I think Russia would be happy with that, because that encompasses most of the land that Russia wanted for its oil and gas. Almost all of Ukraine's oil and gas is in the Donbass. So Russia's already kind of taken that area. And so I think that if Russia can cause enough chaos around the world to sort of distract the world from Ukraine long enough for them to put enough pressure on Ukraine so that they will agree to a ceasefire, I think Russia would stop where they are. Even better still, for Russia, if they can talk the West into not supporting Ukraine anymore, then Russia could actually take over Ukraine like Putin wanted to do in the beginning. But that's going to be a very, very long, bloody battle over many years. Even if the West stopped helping Ukraine today, this war will go on for years, because the Ukrainians are not going to lay down and take that. They're just not. Okay. Do you think they will hold hostages very long, like they did with Gilad Shalit? Yes, they will. They will hold these hostages for years, or until they die, and it's going to be very costly for Israel to get them back, without a doubt. Ecuador has reportedly gotten really violent with cartels lately. What would you say to those escaping Ecuador who may not want to be truthful about origins, knowing they're traveling with embedded cartel members who are actively hunting people that are transiting via multiple escape routes, including the Darien Gap? So what would you say to those escaping Ecuador? Well, don't. We're not seeing a ton of Ecuadorians leaving Ecuador for the United States. The number of people coming through the Darien Gap doesn't have a lot of Ecuadorians in it. Now, it may have more because of the recent violence, but I think this is a pretty, this is not going to blow up into a gigantic civil war in Ecuador or anything like that. The military is cracking down on the gangs and has, over the last couple of weeks, arrested a lot, thousands of gang members. And I'm going to go to Ecuador next week, and so I'll do some reporting from there and let you know what I find out. What do you think will happen if Biden loses the election? What happens to our country? Could Biden declare martial law? I don't think Biden will declare martial law. Americans wouldn't go for it anyway. I think you want to know my opinion? I think the Democrats have become very, very good at fixing the election in several different ways, and they're going to pull out all the stops to fix this one too. And so I think the chances of Trump actually winning are pretty low. Both Trump and Biden are not very well liked overall by the majority of Americans. There are a there's a sizable group of Americans who think Trump walks on water. And there's a sizable group of Americans who actually believe the garbage coming out of the White House, that the Biden administration has been the most profitable administration ever, and they've stopped the migration along the border and all these stupid things that Muppet Karine Jean-Pierre keeps saying. There are people who actually believe that stuff. And there are enough people who believe it that it's going to be a photo finish in this election. But I am skeptical on whether or not Trump can win. I was skeptical the last time Trump actually won. So don't take my word for it. I've been wrong before. And that's one of the reasons I'm not a political reporter, because I'm not very interested in or good at the politics. Okay. Why are the U.S. telegraphing to Russia that they're running out of ammo? Also, do you think, I missed one, sorry. Do you think if Trump is elected, will a U.S. enemy attack before Trump takes office? I think, that's a good question. I don't think that a major attack is going to be predicated on who wins the election. These attacks take literally years to plan. And so I think that they're going to attack no matter what. I think for many reasons they would rather attack. There's a case to be made for why terrorists would rather attack if Trump was president or would rather attack if Biden is president. I think probably Biden is the weaker of the two, without a doubt. So they'd be more likely to attack before the election. But that's a good question. It's a good question. Okay, why are the U.S. telegraphing to Russia that they're running out of ammo? I think it's just the free press. There are journalists who get information leaked by members of the military, I get leaked information all the time. I very rarely report it because there are ethical issues with some of the stuff I've received, and so I'm just not going to report it. But suffice it to say, a free press makes it hard to keep things like that a secret. Were the F-16s that the U.S. gave to Turkey another of Biden's quid pro quos to secure their vote for Sweden to join NATO? Probably so. We should not be giving anything to Turkey whatsoever. But Biden's foreign policy is a mess, and so I think that very well could be why they are giving stuff to Turkey. Connie seems like a funny lady, Chuck. Humor makes relationships bulletproof. Have to laugh at her buying a cow. Well, yeah, she's a very independent, strong woman, and I'm very grateful for that. And so she is liable to just go do stuff sometimes and surprise me. And that does keep our relationship, keeps the marriage fresh for sure. Foster special needs and adopted our two older 5.5 girls. It is rare to get a baby to come through. Yeah, it is. It was really a God thing that we got the baby. They had actually called another family that wanted a baby before they called us, and they were on the phone and didn't take the call. And so then they called us and they said, we got a baby. And Connie said, yes, we'll take it. And then the other family called them back and said, what'd you need? And they was like, oh, well, we had a baby, but we gave it to the Holtons. And they were like, no. They told us later they were really sad. And I'm glad that we got the baby. I don't think Democrats are going to give up power, even if they lose. Well, they really found ways to maintain power last time, didn't they? The Obama administration put people into positions of power and authority throughout the U.S. federal government, and that swamp that we always talked about. And the Biden administration has done more of that and has really done everything they can to inoculate the U.S. government against anything that Trump wants to do once he gets to power, to try to emasculate Donald Trump if he does get into office again. And so if we thought the swamp was bad during the first Trump presidency, it'll be doubly bad if Trump gets another shot at it. Okay. At least one Dem has told Biden to nationalize the Texas National Guard. Do you think he'll actually do it? Well, it's one option. I think if it starts coming down to a question of loyalty, the Texas National Guard might very well tell the federal government to take a flying leap. And then things get really interesting, right? Then what you could see a path to an actual civil war because of all this. For sure. I'm a Christian. Thank you for answering my question. I have another question. That would be Jason Shukra. Have you heard of him? No, I have not. If so, what do you think? Why is it is a no-fly zone over Antarctica North? Don't know what you're talking about. Sorry.
Do you want something to drink?
How do you? Sure.
What do you want?
Tea would be great. Thank you. Yeah. There's my lovely wife. How do you fix an election? Well, I don't. One of the ways that I know that they were fixing the election came out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where there are a massive number of Somalis, and many of them can vote. They're citizens. And what they were doing, the Democrats were sending people around with pre-filled ballots, and saying, hey, we've got your ballot for you. Of course, you want to vote for Biden, don't you? Just sign the ballot. We'll take it in for you. And people just like, yeah, whatever. They don't speak English even. And they go ahead and sign it. And they would stick it in a bag and go turn them all in. These mail-in ballots make things like that very easy to do. And that was happening in many places around the country. Up in places like Detroit, there's lots of evidence that more than 100% of eligible voters actually voted. They got more votes than they had voters. And so I don't know what else you call that, but fixing the elections is what it sounds like to me. Let's see. How do you think the U.S. should take care of the drug cartels in Mexico? Well, you declare them terrorist organizations and you start going after them just like we do with Syria or Iraq or anywhere else. We start dropping JDAMs on cartel members in Mexico, and you're going to see some stuff start to happen. Mexico is going to make a whole heck of a lot of fuss about it, but what are they going to do? What are they going to do about it? Mexico is not going to invade the United States. They're just going to weaponize the migrants against us, and that's what they're already doing. So if they're weaponizing migrants against us, they really don't have any. Thank you, my love. They really don't have any other option if we start dropping bombs on cartel members. They'll certainly complain about it, but we do it in Syria all the time, so why can't we do it in Mexico? Will a U.S. withdrawal from Syria and Iraq cause Iran to start transporting more weapons to Lebanon? No, I don't think. There's Shula. There's a good girl. She's an old dog. She's a sweet girl. Yeah, you're a good girl, aren't you? The United States and Israel have good signals intelligence capability across Syria. The troops that we have in Syria are engaged in fighting ISIS, not engaged in fighting Iran. If Iran is trying to get weapons to Lebanon, then Israel will drop bombs on them and stop that from happening, and they have been over the last few days even. So the United States troops have not been engaged in thwarting anything about Iran directly. They have struck back at some Iranian-backed militias who have been striking us tit for tat, but the United States could still maintain its signals intelligence capability over Syria, and Israel has HUMINT and SIGINT over Syria, and so it won't be us that will be striking at the Iranians, it'll be Israel doing it. What do you think of Erdogan in Turkey? Will he attack Israel? No, he doesn't have an expeditionary military, or at least it's not sufficiently expeditionary to make it across Syria into Israel. He's going to talk a big game and rah-rah, support Hamas, et cetera, but he's not going to directly attack Israel. And NATO, they would lose their NATO membership if they did that. How do we get our nukes out of Turkey? That is a really good question, Hutch. I think it's a very difficult thing to do because these things are the size of a Suburban, and we're not going to sneak them out without Turkey knowing about it. And if we start taking them out of there, Turkey will lock that place down and probably take them hostage, because that's how Turkey has us sort of, by the short hairs already. Turkey, by us having those nukes in Turkey, we are stuck having to be an ally with Turkey. If we could get them out of there, then we wouldn't have that problem. There might be a scenario where we were to just destroy them in place, make them inert somehow, and we wouldn't be taking the full. If we got them out of Turkey, we wouldn't be taking full missiles out. We'd be taking the nuclear tip out of the missiles. But those things still are. We're talking about something the size of a Suburban, and they're not going to sneak them out. So we're stuck with that. And I don't know what the answer is to that. I don't think the U.S. knows what the answer is. Is it better to live in a blue state or red state if trouble breaks out after the election? Well, a red state is better to live in a place where you're allowed to protect yourself. You know, you want to be someplace where you can own a gun and use it to protect yourself if you need to. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. What does it mean to be a U.S. citizen today? Yeah, it means that you have to pay taxes into the U.S. no matter where you live, anywhere around the world. Did you know the United States is one of only 2 countries on the planet who taxes its people no matter where they live? If you're British, let's say, you don't have to pay taxes in Great Britain if you don't live in Great Britain. If you live in Panama, you don't pay taxes in Great Britain. You don't file taxes in Great Britain. And most countries around the world are that way. But the United States is different. The United States, you have to pay tax no matter where you live, whether or not you get any benefit out of those taxes. If you're an American citizen, point, period, end of story. That's all there is to it. And so anymore, that's about all it means to be a U.S. citizen. That, and there's still a lot of places you can travel to without a visa. There are a lot of people that are giving up their American citizenship because if you, like for me, I live in Panama. I lose my tax status if I go back to the United States for more than 35 days a year for pleasure. So I have to keep track of how many days I'm in the United States visiting my grandkids and such, because if it goes over 35 days, it's going to cost me like $70,000 in taxes. So I got to be careful about that. But if I were to give up my U.S. citizenship, then I could go back to the United States for 6 months out of the year and pay no tax. So it would actually be better to be in the United States as a non-citizen than it is to be an American citizen outside the United States. How about that? How about that? Them apples, huh? Okay, so let's see. Is there an EMP attack on the United States? Do you feel safe from the Chinese invading Panama to seize the canal? Well, I think the likelihood of the Chinese invading Panama to take over the canal is pretty slim, especially anytime in the near future. That's because the United States, when it gave the canal over to the Panamanians, retained the right to defend the canal in the case of something just like that. And so trying to take the canal, if the Chinese came in to try to take the canal, they would essentially be attacking the United States and they would be at war with America just like that. And the Chinese do not want a kinetic war with America. They want to destroy America from the inside out. Much less expensive for them to destroy America with fentanyl and TikTok than it is with tanks and aircraft carriers. Okay. I thought your name would be on a voter's list and you had to go to a location designated for you to vote. No, in the last presidential election, that was not the case. They used COVID as an excuse, and you could mail your ballot in from anywhere. And there were people going to the mailboxes there's video of this. People going to the mailboxes with gigantic bags of ballots and dumping them all in because they had gone around neighborhoods and literally filled out people's ballots for them and collected those ballots and turned them in. Do you have any idea how many miles of cartel tunnels that we have at our border? No, we don't have any idea how many miles there are. They find them from time to time. They use certain technologies that they don't want known to find if they're trying to dig a tunnel. So I don't think that there are a ton of tunnels. There are not a lot of them, but any is too many. One is too many, right? Okay. Also, other than the fact that our government just doesn't want to do anything about it, has there been any discussion about investigating the use of the foam or any other tactic that the IDF has used in Israel? They seem to be experts in this. I do not think the United States would flood tunnels. They would seal them, and they have, but they seal them with concrete. They don't seal them with foam or anything like that. And I don't think they would flood them because they wouldn't see that as a humane way to do it, and they can always be unflooded. They try to seal them for good. Greed is awful. Okay, watching from Spokane. That's disgusting. Why didn't the U.S. destroy all its weapons in Afghanistan before leaving that country? That's a very good question, Hutch. They should have, but the reason they didn't is because Joe Biden said we are going to be out by the end of August. By August 30th, we are going to have everybody out. And there just literally was not time to do anything except get the people out in the short time frame that Biden gave them to do it. And so they just left everything. I, of course, did a lot of reporting in Afghanistan, and I was there at the beginning when they were bringing a lot of that equipment in, and they were flying in, not tanks, but I mean like armored vehicles, MRAPs, things like that. And I talked to the guy who had the contract to provide fuel for the aircraft that were coming into Afghanistan, and he said that he was charging $432 a gallon for jet fuel to the U.S. government to bring that stuff in. So you can imagine the cost of taking it out would cost more than it would be to just make new stuff, make new vehicles. And so they just left it all there, but they certainly should have driven it off a cliff or blown it up or something. But they didn't. They just left it all. And we're talking night vision. These are things I would get arrested if I took a set of night vision goggles out of the United States and got caught showing them to somebody that's not a U.S. ally. Like if I take a set of night vision goggles to Syria, it's an ITAR violation, and I could literally go to jail for that. But the United States left thousands of pairs of night vision goggles in Afghanistan. Nobody went to jail. Nobody lost their job. Nobody got in trouble. Unbelievable. Okay. Chuck, this is a difficult question, but you seem prepared for every eventuality, and and a prepper, and so I'd like to hear if you're prepared for this. Mark of the beast. No man can buy or sell unless they have this mark. If we are still here at that point and we refuse that mark, how can we eat or drink if we have nothing to buy or sell with? It's horrible to think about, but it's one of those questions few dare to ask. Well, I did ask that question, and the answer that I came up with led to me living here in Panama. The place where I live right now is a year-round growing season. If you have just a little bit of land, you can grow enough food year-round for your family. And the people here are used to doing that. So it's much more of a barter economy than we have in the United States. And so I decided, even if the day that day comes, that eventuality you're talking about comes, is 50 years from now, I want my family to be prepared for that. And so we moved to Panama. We bought a house. We bought some land. We have food growing in the yard, and we live in a very safe place up in the mountains in the middle of nowhere for that very reason. That's one of the big reasons why I moved down here. There's no need to ever heat or cool your house. It's 75 degrees outside. I got the window open all the time, no screen in the window because there's very few bugs up here. And it stays about 75 degrees year round. So I don't need to heat my house. I don't need to cool my house. So I can live very nicely without electricity. It's a vacation. That's what I would call a vacation if the electric goes out. And that's my answer. How coincidental is the war in Israel when Israel needs a portion of the Gaza Strip for the new Ben Gurion Canal? Now, that's, okay, I can't quite read your name. I'm sorry. Breckner? That's actually false. Israel, there were some people in Israel that floated the idea of a Ben Gurion Canal years ago. It was immediately rejected. It did not go anywhere. They are not going to build a canal across the Sinai or across southern Israel. That is a tinfoil hat, Alex Jones, ridiculous. That's not going to happen, and it's not. Nobody's planning it. There's some places that have put out news articles about it. Those are not reputable sources by any stretch, and I can confidently tell you that the Israelis are not planning on building a canal across Gaza. And if they were, they could easily go around Gaza and go through Sderot, and it would add something like 8 kilometers to the total 300 kilometers. I mean, the distance that canal would have to go anyway makes it virtually impossible that they could build it. It's like 300 kilometers. Like, there's no canal in the world that's that long. And so, and you're talking about across one of the worst deserts in the world. So the possibility of doing that is slim to none, and slim left a long time ago. Not going to happen. If you had to leave Panama, where would you go? You mean to live? Maybe El Salvador? If I had to leave Panama because it got so bad here, I probably would go someplace even more remote. But there are other factors that come into play. If I was looking for another passport so that I could visit the United States without a visa, if I were to give up my U.S. citizenship, let's say, then I'd probably look at someplace like Spain or Portugal, because I can easily get citizenship over there, get a EU passport, and then I can come and go in the United States all I want, pretty much. So El Salvador, though, is actually pretty safe, and someplace like that, up in the mountains of Guatemala, there's some pretty remote places where you could go get lost and still live in a safe, tranquil, peaceful place with a year-round growing season. So there you go. Because the Afghan army was expected to keep and defend them, well, that's true. That's also true. Sean, MD, the United States had this sort of Pollyannic idea that the Afghan army would just pick up and defend their country. Anybody who had actually spent time on the ground in Afghanistan knew that was not going to happen. I certainly could tell that wasn't going to happen many, many years ago. Like 2012, I knew, like, these guys are never going to be able to defend their own country. Literacy rate, the cowardice of the people there, the idea, that it's so deeply ingrained in their culture that you do not do anything to improve your lot in life, because that's a slap in the face to Allah. And so you were born the way you were born, and you're going to keep living that way. And so that permeates their whole culture. And we could tell that no matter how much we gave them, they would never be able to use it to defend themselves. Chuck, do you think Syria will attack immediately after the U.S. withdrawal? No. The U.S. is not in the areas that are controlled by Syria. The U.S. bases are in places that are controlled by the Kurds. And the Kurds are our friends. Syria is not going to, we're not there to keep Syria from attacking the Kurds. Although there may be some ancillary benefit to us being there that might make that happen. But will Syria ever attack the Kurds and try to take back that region? If they can get strong enough to do so or get enough support from Russia, yes. Right now, they're not strong enough to do so, and they're not getting enough support from Russia to take on the Kurds. So I don't think that's likely. The Syrian army is not going to attack the Kurds after the U.S. withdrawal. Or attack Israel, if that's what you're talking about. Syria can't attack Israel, really, because they don't have a expeditionary force either, and there's a lot of distance they would have to cover with their army to get to the Israeli border. Okay, agreed. Why not use petroleum exploration techniques as those commercially used to determine oil field strata to determine if cartel tunnels exist in the USA? Let's just say they may actually be using things like that, and we'll leave it at that. Florida, another question. Any idea of the reduction of population in South America? We know that we're counting coming across our border, but it's probably an impossible question to answer. I'm wondering if some of South America at least is not viable at this point for industries such as a business establishment. There's plenty of places in South Africa or South America where you could start a business and do very well. And a lot of people are, and they're doing that specifically because starting a business in the United States is prohibitively expensive because of all the regulations. So there are fewer regulations in many places in Latin America, and so they're coming here to start businesses instead. I myself have a business in Panama. If our interpretation of that is isn't accurate. It pays to be prepared with plan B. The only disciple that died naturally was John. Okay. What's the latest on hot zone gear? Yeah, probably I'm not going to do hot zone gear. I think that's kind of silly. What I might do, I have actually spoken with some people about putting together like a Chuck Holton line of luggage because I travel so much, and I think I could come up with a better suitcase or better luggage than many of the options that are out there right now. Are land or housing prices cheaper than the USA? Yes, they are here in Panama, if that's what you're asking about. Prices here in Panama for land are cheaper for comparable land in the United States. For example, in Panama, you could, we bought our first 3-bedroom, 3-bath house in Panama for $130,000. We then renovated it and then sold it and bought a bigger house. And that is in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the entire country. So there are places where you could buy a house, 3-bedroom, 3-bath house for $50,000 or $60,000. If you were to go out into the mountains and get real remote, you could buy a farm out there for $25,000. I've seen them for sale out there, so it is safer here. Okay. Have I heard anything about the tunnels found in the synagogue? It sounds like I read a little bit about it, but I don't even think it's worth talking about. I don't think it was a major issue. It was a bunch of kids, and they put these tunnels in so that they could get to someplace where they were holding these ceremonies and partying without going outside. I don't know. It's kind of stupid, if you ask me. Anyway, I think there are more important things. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We've just gone over an hour, so I'm going to go. It's time to take the monkey for her walk today. So I'm going to go get Missy, and we're going to go out and get some exercise. So God bless you all. Thank you for being on with me, and thank you for all your questions. Please like and share the podcast wherever you see it. Take care. Bye-bye.